Do you remember last year? We talked about this story very briefly last year, and it's coming to fruition. It's something that we exposed on the show related to the Democrat Socialists of America, the DSA. So the DSA is the left, the very radical part of the left wing. They are AOC. She's a DSA member, Ilhan Omar, those types of people. They're DSA members. Zohran Mamdani, a DSA member. These usually young, very radical, openly socialist candidates aren't just members of the Democratic Party. They run as Democrats in elections, but they're actually members of the Democrat Socialists of America. And last year, I showed you a video of what the DSA actually has planned for our country, their plot to infiltrate not just the Democratic Party, but American institutions. And I want to show you that again, because it's not just a prediction now. This has begun to come to fruition. Take a look.
It's no secret that the Democratic Socialists of America hate the Democratic Party.
I think we're all on the same page that we hate the Democratic Party.
The Democratic Party is not really our friend. It isn't.
So why are the DSA such major players in the Democratic Party? This odd relationship can be understood with the cuckoo analogy. In nature, the cuckoo survives by trickery. It lays its egg in another bird's nest. The unsuspecting parents raise the imposter as their own until the cuckoo grows strong enough to push the true chicks out. The DSA is the cuckoo inside the Democratic Party.
DSA is not the Democratic Party.
We must separate ourselves from the toxic Democratic Party.
We can put forward a clear, aggressive, principled strategy that pushes back against the Democratic leadership and the Democratic Party as a whole.
DSA candidates run as Democrats in safe blue districts. They slip through low turnout primaries. And once inside, they use the Democratic label as camouflage while advancing an extremist anti-American agenda far beyond the party's mainstream.
I don't agree with the Democratic Party, but it's a great tool.
The Democratic is a tool that we use.
Once in office, DSA candidates take orders from DSA's internal enforcers and working groups. City halls and state houses start running as socialist machines controlled by the organization, not the Democratic Party, and certainly not voters.
They have to have a connection with DSA's internal politics, and they have to be committed to the eventual goal of building a separate entity from the Democrats.
DSA are revolutionaries, and the Democrats are their first victims. And in city after city, DSA victories prove their plan works.
I think that the model that we used in New York is 100% replicatable.
And just like the cuckoo, once the DSA grows strong, it pushes the true Democrats out, hollowing the party from within,
building towards political independence and tearing apart the Democratic Party.
The DSA is not here to strengthen the Democratic Party. It is here to consume it.
We're not here to make the Democrats a little bit better. We're here to actually enact socialism. And socialism is not just better capitalism. It's overthrowing the entire capitalist state.
It's our duty, DSA, to cultivate this power.
The cuckoo is in the nest, and New York City is poised to elect not a Democrat, but Zohran Mamdani, an extremist within the DSA.
We understand that winning an election is not an end. It is a means to an end.
So the most important thing that we can do is take that empire down from within.
Ultimately to overthrow our own empire.
We need a movement that can drive a stake through the heart of the empire.
We need to orient ourselves towards insurrection.
That was made before Zohran Mamdani was elected. He's now the mayor of New York City. Democrats and the Democrat Party aren't the only victims here. These are the things that were said in that video. The model that we used in New York, they mean the election of Zohran Mamdani, is 100% replicable. That means they intend to do what they did to elect Zohran Mamdani in other cities and states across the country. We're here to enact socialism, they said, to overthrow the entire capitalist state, to overthrow our own empire, and to orient ourselves towards insurrection. Those are very significant threats. They view them as promises. Those are very significant threats to America's well-being. And yet, it doesn't seem like people on our own side are taking this threat quite seriously. In fact, my colleagues here at The Blaze, Chris Rufo and Lomez, who recently launched a show, were discussing the election of Zohran Mamdani in the days after Zohran was elected, when people were like, wow, it's kind of crazy that 25 years after 9/11, we have a Marxist Muslim who's the mayor of New York City. it will really cause your mind to spin when you think of how that can even happen. Not even an entire generation after New York City was hit by radical Islamist terror attacks. But Rufo and Lomez downplayed the election of Mamdani, almost ridiculing the idea that he would have any impact in implementing that socialist agenda of the DSA as mayor of New York City. Take a look at this.
Although I would say this, it's important to not fall for the right-wing boomer bait to say that Mamdani is the Islamist candidate.
Yeah,
that he's going to bring Sharia law to New York City. That's not quite right.
I don't find it all that concerning, really. I mean, again, like, we can sit here and go, oh my gosh, and lose our minds like the communists are taking over New York City or something. I don't really think that's the case. I don't see a path towards implementing a project where Zohran Mamdani is leading his Mexican abuelas and Senegalese taxi drivers to seize the means of production. I don't even know what that would mean. Like, they go into BlackRock and like depose Larry Fink from, his offices, and somehow they're now in charge of this sort of massive, wealth of capital or something. I don't think so.
I'll tell you exactly how that will happen. First of all, Zohran Mamdani has a chief counsel. His new chief counsel in his mayoral position is an attorney that defended al-Qaeda. Zohran Mamdani himself is a member of an Islamist sect that's trying to bring chaos to the world because they think that that will bring their imam or whoever they are expecting to come back from the dead out of hiding. Zohran Mamdani has expressed this himself. We should believe him when he says this. That's not boomer clickbait. That's simply understanding the enemy that you're facing. And what Lomez did is he created somewhat of a straw man. He said, what is Zohran going to do? March down to BlackRock and depose them and seize private property? Well, no, that's not how it works, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to impose his socialist beliefs. And we can see exactly how he's beginning to impose his socialist beliefs. If you look behind the curtain, if you look at who he has surrounding him in his administration and who surrounded him on his transition team. For example, if we want to talk about seizing private property, then we have to look no further than Mamdani's director of the mayor's office to protect tenants, Sia Weaver. Sia Weaver went viral just this week because she claimed that the new policies on housing in New York City under the Mamdani administration is going to impact white people the most, and that's the intention. Take a look.
I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good, and we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently, and it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
So what would that different relationship to property be that will disproportionately impact white families? That's exactly what Lomez was saying is not going to happen. That is, in essence, Zohran Mamdani walking down the street and seizing private property, implementing racially biased, racially discriminatory policies that prevent white people specifically from having the same relationship with property, also known as ownership of property, that they have had in the past. This is what Zohran Mamdani is promising. And by the way, thank goodness we have an assistant attorney general like Harmeet Dillon in the Department of Justice. She responded almost immediately and said, New York, consider this your official notice from the Justice Department. We will not tolerate discrimination based on skin color. It is illegal. She said the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice is paying very close attention. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Thank goodness. But this is the very definition of imposing socialism. And sometimes it's the people whose names you're not as familiar with, the staff members, the people in the administration in the New York City mayor's office who are going to be doing exactly what Rufo and Lomez said was not going to happen. By the way, Eric Adams responded to Sia Weaver's comments about home ownership. She has an old tweet that says that, home ownership and private property is a thing of white supremacy. And Eric Adams says, he's the former mayor, of course. He says home ownership is how immigrants, black, brown, and working class New Yorkers built stability and generational wealth despite every obstacle. You have to be completely out of your effing mind to call that white supremacy. that level of thinking only comes from extreme privilege and total detachment to reality. Sia Weaver had previously claimed, this was just in 2019, she said private property, including and kind of especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy masquerading as wealth-building public policy. She is actually against private property, and she will use her position of power to destroy private property, to take it away, despite the fact that her mom, by the way, Sia Weaver's mom, owns a $1.6 million house in Tennessee. Always these socialists. How many houses does Bernie Sanders have? Well, can't keep track. Sia Weaver's mom owns over $1 million worth of property in Tennessee, a $1.6 million home. But this is true for the entire Mamdani administration. He has saturated New York City with DSA members who want to orient themselves towards insurrection, who want to overthrow the empire, who believe that you're not just pushing socialism, you are tearing down a nation built on capitalism. We have Alex Vitale, formerly a Brooklyn College professor of sociology. He was on Mamdani's transition team. He wrote a book called The End of Policing, and he argued for the abolition of police. These people have influence in their positions. This is not just something that they put out on X. This is how you implement socialism once you win the mayoralty, to use a Chris Rufo's big word. This is how you influence policy, using the mayoralty. He has pushed to abolish this Alex Vitale. He's pushed to abolish the New York City Police Department's gang database. He wants to abolish sex work. And he's very open about this. We have a video. You can see it.
We've helped to organize city council hearings, and right now we're part of an effort that has produced a bill that's before the city council that would eliminate the NYPD's ability to use gang databases to criminalize young people in the absence of any actual criminal charges. There's also a huge discourse around trafficking, which involves the coercion of people into sex work. And of course, we want to raise objections to any kind of coercive behavior. We want to provide services and outreach to try to reduce people's vulnerability to that kind of coercion. But our traditional prohibitionist model of policing either sex workers or clients fails to reduce that vulnerability. Our position, and the position of the people that we interviewed over several years, was that what they wanted was a form of decriminalization. That this would give them greater ability to protect themselves. Yeah, I consider the Policing and Social Justice Project to be a public policy center more than a pure research center. Mm-hmm. We are looking at best practices, we're analyzing existing policies, we're working with communities to try to assess what would be the best strategy to address the concerns that they have in their local communities, whether it's dealing with things like school safety, youth violence, mental health crisis response, etc. So there are...
As you can plainly... This same person, by the way, calls police class enemies. He wants to abolish the police. You think that won't have an impact, a real-world impact? There's another Mamdani transition team member. His name's Gustavo Gordillo. He's on the Economic Development and Workforce Development Committee. There's a photograph of him with Zohran if you're interested. This is his quote. He says, they make figures like Hamas and quote-unquote terrorists into effective enemies. The terror actually comes from the capitalists and their pawns. This is what he said. Take a listen.
They make figures like Hamas and quote-unquote terrorists into effective enemies. I think all of us in the working class movement need to spend more time villainizing too. There are actual terrorists in the United States, but they are not Mahmoud Khalil, nor are they the students and working class people protesting Israel's genocide. And it is definitely not the Palestinian people. The terror comes from the capitalists and their pawns. People like the CEOs of weapons manufacturers, or Jeff Bezos, who wages class war against workers and takes away their freedom economically and at the workplace. The terror comes from their fascist government and their ICE squads. There are terrorists in the United States who deserve to be detained, and they sit high up in their offices in the financial district and in Washington, D.C. Their goal is to demoralize you. Their goal is to scare you out of action.
These are the people in the Mamdani administration. So yes, I do have valid concerns that the Mamdani playbook, as the DSA promised, is going to be replicated in cities across the country. Remember, sometimes the most detrimental impacts are from policies that are imposed on us by people whose names we're not even familiar with. So no, Zohran Mamdani is not going to march down to BlackRock and depose the president of BlackRock and seize private property. But what he's going to do is what he's doing. He's appointing people in his administration who are going to discriminate against white people, who are going to make it difficult for people to own private property. He's going to redefine what terrorism means. So if you are a radical Islamist, well, you're welcome in New York City. But if you're a capitalist, then you will be punished and treated like a terrorist. These have real world impacts, not to mention, as socialist promises, as always happens to socialist promises, his socialist promises are already going by the wayside. He promised free public transportation, and the rates in New York City have already increased. That has real world impacts, and it's something that we shouldn't just say, wow, the nutcases in New York City elected a weirdo mayor, a Muslim Marxist nutcase. We should be aware of what their strategy is, the DSA strategy to infiltrate the Democratic Party, and in left-leaning areas that the voting demographic is primarily college-educated people who have been indoctrinated into believing what Zohran Mamdani and his ilk believe, that they want to vote for him because they believe that what he offers is moral. That's what we have to recognize if we want to stop this, not make up some kind of straw man argument and shame people for noticing that Zohran Mamdani, once did a rap about Islamist terrorists, praising them, and then say, but you're a boomer and you only like boomer clickbait if you notice that he has embraced radical Islamist ideology and surrounded himself with people who have committed acts of terrorism in the name of the Islamic religion. Our movement is gaining ground. People around us are waking up. The mainstream media leftist narrative is cracking. At Blaze TV, we've built a home for some of the strongest, smartest voices in conservative media. When you subscribe to Blaze TV, you're not just watching content, you're supporting a movement. You're backing creators who think for themselves. It's everything that the networks won't show you, delivered on your terms on any device, anytime. And it starts at just $8 a month. BlazeTV.com/Liz, promo code Liz.